because the reason why we're so negative and we get wrapped up in it is because we're telling ourselves a negative story. But it's just our perspective of things. It's not reality. So why not tell yourself a positive and optimistic story, right? To get yourself closer to that goal.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Path Project. In today's episode, I have a very, very special guest, and I'm really excited to bring her on. She did her undergrad in athletic therapy at Concordia University, went on to do her another undergrad in psychology, and then completed her master's in performance psychology. She's currently doing mental performance consulting, and she's working with individuals as well as groups, a lot of different athletes. So guys, when it comes down to it, she knows her stuff about preparing athletes for performance, preparing athletes mentally in order to further sport, as well as dealing with various setbacks such as negativity, pressure, and just various things like that we're all going to get into today. So without further ado, I'm so excited again to bring today's guest, Lan Anh Phan, and thank you so much for coming on. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So the first thing I kind of want to start off with is just by you telling us a little bit about just the whole performance psychology world, because I know that a lot of it's quite a new field, and like just tell us a little bit about what you do specifically.
Okay. Yeah. So when we say performance psychology, it could be like athletes, mostly like of what I do as athletes, but it could be anyone like in a performance context, whether it is like business, performing arts, military, so things like that. So that's what we talk about when we say performance psychology. So what I do is, in general, teach mental skills to my clients so they can optimize their performance and as well-being as well. So that's a general explanation, but yes, there's an exploration of their mental aspect of their performance context that I do with them, and then throughout that journey we implement strategies in their lives to improve their performance.
That's awesome. I love that. So a little bit off camera before, we were talking about kind of the whole process versus the process versus the outcome. And I was just wondering if you could just talk and elaborate a little bit further on that concept, because I found it so interesting and I want to share it with everyone.
Yeah, it's a concept that's getting more popular now, and the best way that I like to describe it is the journey versus the destination. Right? So you want to get to one place, but if you're not enjoying the journey, you're not looking at the scenery, you might be missing out on certain things. And like you can't go from point A to point B in a second, right? So there's time that's going to be going on, and you have to enjoy the journey, the process, instead of only being fixated on the outcome, because again, there's so many lessons that can be learned. There's so many skills that you're developing, even if it's not your main goal. So a lot is happening, in the journey and the process, and it's important to enjoy that while having your eyes on the vision.
I like that a lot. So for someone that is, let's say, very goal oriented, someone that's trying to not get fixated, let's say, on the outcome in their everyday life. So for example, for me, I'll give you an example. One of my goals is trying to reach 1,000 subscribers on my current YouTube channel. So let's say after a month I don't see any results. Well, how do I not get too fixated on the outcome after, and let that affect me in my everyday life?
Well, there's two things. The first is related to what we just talked about, process versus outcome. You can have outcome goals. So reaching 1,000 subscribers, that would be your outcome. But an example of a process goal that you could set is, okay, I want to get better at, speaking fluidly, on camera. That could be a process goal, right? So by having those other goals on the side, you can be focused on mastering your craft instead of just looking at the numbers.
Okay, so you think it's more important to have these process goals and also these outcome goals, but you think that putting the process goals in priority is more important compared to the outcome goals?
Both, because you have to have like an end goal, right? You have to have a vision.
Yeah, for sure.
But what are you going to do to get there? And that's the process. So it's not just the numbers, because you could get to 1,000 subscribers, right? But there might be other things that you want to improve, right? The 1,000 is just a number. It might not represent the whole story. So if you want to, like I said, master your craft, get better at, editing videos, talking on camera and things like that, I think that it's going to help you stay motivated and stay on track to get to that outcome goal.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a second thing that I would suggest.
Yep.
And it's a popular acronym that people have heard before probably, is SMART goals.
Okay.
I'll go through the letters, but that's how I do it. I know that there's other versions of it, but the goal with that is to make sure that you're thinking your outcome goals through. So I'll go with the acronym. So SMART. So S would be specific, M measurable, A action-based, R realistic, and T time-based. So if we take your example of 1,000 subscribers, right, it's quite specific. It's not like 1,000 views or 1,000 likes, it's 1,000 subscribers. That's quite specific. And then measurable, you have a number, right? I also suggest, setting a range instead of a super specific number. So it could be like 900 to 1,100, right? So it's more flexible. And then action-based, again, that could be more like around the process. How am I going to get there? How am I going to get to 1,000 subscribers? Is it by doing more marketing, by, sharing those links everywhere I can? So actions. What actions are you going to take to get to that point and not just think about a number? R, is it realistic? So are you starting from 0 to 1,000 in a month? Or like, are you close to that goal? Is it realistic for you? And T, time-based. So you set a month. Again, is that realistic? So by going through those points, it's like you're thinking your goal through and making sure that, you're going to get there. And it's not just like wishful thinking,
Okay. I want to target that a little bit more, because I don't know, that's something that's always really interested me, is like a lot of people that I've heard, they say that they try to almost like they push the idea of setting a goal that's very high, because if you do that, then you can, like, if you are an individual that works really, really hard and you set a high goal, maybe that will push you even further. So I'm just interested, how do you kind of find that balance between like realistic and something that's gonna push you? Because I could say like a realistic goal, let's say for example, is like 100 subscribers, which is like 10 times less. You know what I mean? But I know I can achieve that, but at the same time, it's like something that's not gonna push me as much. You know what I mean? So that's why like the term realistic kind of confuses me a little bit.
Yeah, well, realistic, it depends on the person, right? Like you said, personality, right, will affect it. So I like, when I work with an individual, and I'll do it with you, I like to play with the numbers. So let's say the number you have in mind is 1,000. So I'll ask you, if you get to 900, will you be satisfied? Is it something that you're going to be okay with? If it's a no, then okay, we can push it. But if it's okay, yeah, 900 is quite a good number. Like, I'm happy with that. So you could lower it so you have more chances of achieving it. And then we can go to the higher number. Like, okay, is 1,200 realistic? And then you might decide for yourself, okay, I think I can do it. It's not too scary of a goal. And if I don't reach the 1,200 exactly, I'll be okay. So it's kind of like your tolerance to risk, I guess, a little bit. So just play with the numbers. What's the range? And then pick a number in that range that you're going to be satisfied with. And again, it might differ from, how you see the 1,000 from another person, right? So it's a good question.
That's good. I like that answer. It's really good. The next thing is just about an individual. I'll give you another example. So an individual is very goal-oriented, and they want to try to get better. They're obsessed with progressing, trying to get better, growing. But at the same time, they want to try to enjoy the present moment. So they want to try to, whether that's hang out with friends, enjoy nature, you know, all these different things that they could do in the present moment. How do they satisfy the need of just trying to push and become better every single day while at the same time or simultaneously like enjoying the now? Is it possible?
It is. And I'll give you a simple answer. I know it's not a simple question, but it's everything happens in the now. So even if you're goal oriented, you're obsessed with growth and progress, you can't work on that yesterday or tomorrow. Like it's today, it's right now.
Okay.
Right? So if you're absorbed in the present moment, whether it is, you know, self-care or work, that's going to mold your future. Right? So yes, you can have a vision, you can want certain things, but all of that happens in the now. So if you're not absorbed in the present moment, again, you might not get to where you want to be. So you can do both, right? You can be passionate about, you know, your goals and take that motivation in the moment to do what you have to do, right?
Okay, so you think it's just more about finding like a balance in that case then?
Again, it comes back to what we said, process versus outcome. You have to have both types of goals, right? But everything happens now, so you can't skip over that.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, that's good. I like that a lot. So next up, I want to talk about pressure. I'll give an athlete kind of example because I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. But just dealing with, let's say there's an athlete, they have a big game, big trial up ahead, and they want to deal with, they're trying to deal with pressure. There's someone that gets nervous a lot. Maybe they can't handle the pressure of a big scenario. Is there any specific things or protocols that you would tell that person to try to like help deal with that help prepare them mentally and deal with that situation?
Well, there's no magic solution. So ideally, I would work with that person ahead of time, like not just on the day of that event.
Okay.
And in those discussions, we'll try to reframe the perspective on pressure, because for some people, pressure is a good thing, right? And there's a quote from, you know, a well-renowned sports psychologist who said, pressure is a privilege. So if you feel some pressure, it's because you have the talent to, or you have, you know, you've earned your right to be there and to compete. So reframing your perspective on that and on maybe the symptoms that you're feeling. So, you know, like the butterflies that you have in your stomach, some people might feel like it's a bad thing, like, oh no, like I'm feeling this right now, it's not gonna go well. But you can change your perspective and be like, okay, I feel this because something important is going on. I have the chance or the opportunity to compete and to prove myself and to push my limits. So, okay, I'm feeling this right now. I'm excited, right? So it's the same symptoms. It's the same situation. It's just a different point of view. So that would be the ideal thing to do ahead of time. And then maybe on the day of, right, preparation is key. So having a good pre-performance routine is super important. Being organized in the way that you approach that event. Confidence also, right? Being confident in your abilities, confident in your skills and all that. So that's what I would say is important on the day of, because you can only control what you can, right? And pressure often comes from the outside. So you can't change that. You can't change people's expectations. You can't change the number of people in a crowd. You can't change the stakes, but you can control your preparation, control, you know, your energy, where your focus is going to be. So it's really about that.
That's awesome. The next thing I want to talk about is just the importance of visualization. So again, something we talked a little bit about off camera, but like the importance of visualization in terms of how that's going to impact the success of an athlete. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I told you, there's different objectives when you want to visualize. And the two big categories for me are, one, if you want to improve technique. So if you want to visualize something specific, like a movement or a skill or anything technical or tactical. And then the other part is more like on the motivation side of things and the confidence. So I think that using both in your performance context is really beneficial. But in terms of motivation, I think that being able to see yourself win it's so powerful. So by practicing, because visualization is a skill, it's not just one day you imagine yourself winning and that's it, right? It's something that you work at every day. But if you're able to see things clearly and in a realistic manner, it's going to help you, definitely. There's a big effect, and it's been proven in sports and in other contexts that visualization is very beneficial.
That's good. Do you think that the specificity of the visualization that you're doing is important, or do you think like it's okay if you just visualize like I want to achieve like this goal, or do you think like you need to picture yourself in that specific moment winning that goal, what your environment is like all of that, or what do you think about that?
The main rule that I try to teach is it has to be realistic. So let's say you have an event, in 2 weeks from now, you know exactly where it's going to be, you know, and which event you're going to compete in, right? So if you're able to see yourself do those things, it's even better. So like your confidence levels are going to be increased, your motivation and all these things. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen for sure, but if you can see yourself in that environment, in that context with, everything that's going on, the value and the power of that image is going to increase. So yes, I'd say that being specific, right, is super important.
Okay. I want to talk about a little bit about negativity now. So just having like a negative mindset, I think it's easy for a lot of us to get kind of wrapped up in that, whether it's, let's say there's a micro goal or a macro goal, like something that you're trying to achieve, like your dream job, for example. How do we kind of like, are there any strategies that you'd say we can use to mitigate like a negative mindset in this context?
Well, there's many ways that you can approach something like that, but the one thing that I really like to do with clients is to change the narrative, change the vocabulary. So I'll give you a super easy example. So instead of saying, oh, I'm never going to get there, I'm never going to do this, just change the never. Like, I'm just not there yet. Right? So using words, like changing the words that you're using in your vocabulary, not just when you're saying it, but when you're thinking them, right, is making a big difference. Because the reason why we're so negative and we get wrapped up in it is because we're telling ourselves a negative story. But it's just our perspective of things. It's not reality. So why not tell yourself a positive and optimistic story, right, to get yourself closer to that goal? So it's really about changing that bad habit of using words like never, or, anything that's negative, or like super like, strict and not flexible. So I think it makes a big difference. So whether it is doing that, changing your vocabulary, or having positive reminders. So maybe some people like to start their day with positive affirmations. Okay, today's going to be a great day, right? It sounds cheesy a little bit, but it works, right? It's the way that you decide to start your day and to know that you'll have a great day. And maybe if an obstacle happens during the day, you might tell yourself, okay, well, the day isn't over. Right? So it's just the way that you talk to yourself and talk about yourself.
So for someone that's very, very negative, let's say, what would you say that they could do as a first step? Like, would you say that like first step of being more positive or just changing things around, would you say that positive affirmation, like you said in the morning, would be something that they could just start off as doing as like an exercise?
Well, even before that, if they're like very, very negative, it's about self-awareness. Okay. Write down the things that you repeat to yourself every day that are not helpful.
Okay.
Right? So then like having it in your face, you'll be like, okay, maybe that's not helpful. Maybe I can change one or two. Right? So it's not going from like being super negative to faking to be positive the next day. It's just that self-awareness step that's super important to notice. What am I telling myself? How is it affecting me? And then once you realize that, maybe changing some words to start, and then maybe a full like positive affirmation later.
That's good. Another thing is just me personally, I struggle with comparison, like comparing myself with successful athletic therapists, successful businessmen or women. Is there any specific self-talk or any things that I would tell myself when I feel like I am in that zone of comparing, to kind of get myself out of that and keep myself focused on my path?
Yeah, it's something that we all do. I think we can't, stay away from it. But there's the self-compassion piece that's super, super important, like acceptance too. Like just telling yourself, okay, I'm not where I want to be yet, but here I am and I'm doing my best, right? And again, it goes with what I said before about the narrative, because when you look at other successful ATs, or maybe people who are, at the same level, but are doing things that you wish you were doing, it's a story that you're telling yourself, right? You're putting yourself down and putting them up, but in reality, you might be doing great also. So again, it's trying to just stay focused on what you're doing and accepting where you are, right? And like, if you look at where you are right now, you're not satisfied. Are you doing everything in your power to get better? If so, yes, be patient. It sucks to hear that, but be patient. You're going to get there. And, going from point A to point B, there's many different paths to get there. And again, if you're so focused on the outcome, you might not realize that you've learned so much in a journey. And that's even more valuable than, getting that dream job. Right? So the journey is so important, and everyone's journey is different in different ways for different reasons. So you have to remind yourself of that. And the other quick thing that you could do is avoid triggers, right? If you know that there's certain things that, make yourself go down that rabbit hole, stay away from it. If it's, unfollowing people, staying off social media, right? So just avoid those triggers if you can.
And I think if we use everything you just said and try to keep on our path, then in turn that's gonna just help us to not concentrate on these other people, at least less time than we're doing right now, and just try to focus, like you keep pinning the point of focusing on our process and our journey. Do you have any specific daily habits that you would recommend for people to try to do to have them, to make them function at their best?
The one thing that I'll mention first, because it's linked to the answer that I just gave you for the point before, is gratitude. Right? Be grateful for where you are. Be grateful for where you're at now, what you've done in the past. Be proud of what you've accomplished. So practicing gratitude every day, I think, is a great thing, because we get so caught up in the I wish, or the what if, or the uncertainty of the future. We get maybe a little bit anxious about that, and practicing gratitude anchors you in a present moment, right? It's positive. It's focusing on yourself, right? And sometimes it's the little things, and that's as powerful as anything else, right? So realizing that where you are right now, and I don't necessarily want to go into the pandemic situation, but it's even more important in those times where things are not going great globally, but you can still find things to be grateful for. So that's one thing. Meditation is great. There's so many apps out there that can help you with that. So guided meditation is great. Just in general, I think that having a routine helps. Not necessarily like, specific times, but just having like a checklist of things that you want to do in your day, making sure that you're taking care of yourself. Self-care is a big thing, and it's especially in performance. A lot of performers are neglecting that aspect, right? So recovery is super important. Self-care is important. Not just in your day, but in your week, making sure that you're taking time to take care of yourself. So those might seem like small things, but they make a difference in terms of well-being.
For sure, I can imagine. The last thing is just talking a little bit about resilience, something we mentioned before, and just kind of how that separates like great performers from good performers.
Resilience is something that I love to talk about because it doesn't matter how skilled you are, and how talented you are, and how much, like, yes, hard work is super important, but being resilient, meaning being able to face adversity, right, and bouncing back, the term that people use often, is super important because you can't avoid obstacles, especially in performance. The higher level you go, right, the further you go in your career, the more obstacles you'll face. And if you're not able to effectively address those and face the obstacles, the better it'll be. So when you compare like the good athletes versus the great ones, it could be small things like motivation, like I don't feel like working out today. Well, that could be an obstacle for you, but pushing through, I think the pushing through part makes a difference between the good ones and the great ones. And it's about doing what others aren't willing to. If you want to separate yourself from the pack, it's about doing things that other people won't do, and that's adversity, right? It's pushing through obstacles. It's seeing obstacles not as problems, but as opportunities. And I feel like resilient people do that. Resilient people are aware that those things are going to happen, like anytime, any day, but are ready and prepared to do that, and not, maybe fall back on that victim mentality, like things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you. So taking advantage of those situations to improve, get better. So I think that's a big piece when we talk about performance. Again, resilience, like it's a skill that has to be practiced, but it goes with life experience too. Like people go through different things, every day. And again, if we talk about the pandemic, that's, something that we can all use as practice to be resilient, to become resilient. So yeah, I think it makes a big difference.
That's amazing. I couldn't have said it better myself. So a lot of good points there. I want you to tell everyone where they can find you, where they can learn more information about you, because I'm sure people will want to after hearing all of that.
Yeah, well, the best way to get to know more about what I do is by going on my website. So www.lphan, so lfanconsulting.com. So on my website, you'll see like all the services that I offer, frequently asked questions, contact information. On social media, I'm more active on Instagram. So it's my handle is LPHAN_MPC. So I post stories daily about, performance. So follow me, I'll follow back. And that's where you can find information about me.
Love that. Thank you so much again for coming on. Guys, please go back and watch this again, because she covered a lot of important topics, a lot of amazing things. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And that, honestly, guys, that wraps up today's episode of the Path Project. We're signing out. No problem. We're signing out, guys. Peace.